This is 7 Realities, 1 Hope, Lesson 8, Glory Which Lasts. Our hope is to get lasting glory. In other words, the hope of those who follow Christ is that we'll obtain eternal glory, a glory which will never fade away. Compare the glory to which we aspire to the glory Moses obtained. Moses obtained a certain degree of glory. His face shone so brightly, he had to cover his face with a veil. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, the skin on his face shone. And Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, and to their amazement the skin of his face shone. And they were afraid of coming near him. And Moses finished speaking with them, and he put a veil on his face. And when Moses came before Yahweh to speak with him, he would remove the veil until he went out. And he would go out and speak to the Israelites what he had been commanded. And the Israelites would see the face of Moses, and that the skin of the face of Moses shone, and Moses would put the veil back on his face. That was Exodus chapter 34, verses 29 to 30, and verses 33 to 35. Moses got the glory of a shining face by meeting with God as a God's minister of the law. His service to God was what the Bible calls a ministry of death in letters carved on stones. That's in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 7, and a ministry of condemnation, verse 9. So it was not a greater ministry than ours. Ours is called the ministry of the Spirit, verse 8, and also ministry of righteousness, verse 9. Our ministry is superior to Moses' ministry. Therefore, we have the potential to obtain greater glory than Moses. So, Moses had a glorious ministry, the Old Covenant. It was such a great ministry based on the priesthood of Aaron. But we are ministers of the New Covenant, an even greater ministry based upon the priesthood of Jesus. It's important to compare the two ministries. You should be able to deduce that ours is much more glorious. Here is 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 10 to 12. What was glorious, Moses' ministry, has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. And if that was what was transitory came with glory, how much greater is the glory of that which lasts? Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold. What is this hope, the one Paul calls such a hope? It's the hope of obtaining a resurrection body, made eternally strong, healthy, intelligent, and beautiful forever. That's the glory which lasts. So the hope of this passage is the one hope, the resurrection. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 4. We have the hope of getting a resurrected body. Moses' face shined for a time. Our faces will shine forever. Our hope is that we'll have a permanent eternal glory, a surpassing glory. It will become ours at the resurrection when we are made fit to reign with Christ. That glory was prophesied by Daniel as he looked forward to the last times. He said that we would be like stars forever. Here is Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who led many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. This glory is the same glory that God gave to Jesus. Here is John chapter 17, verse 5, and verses 22 to 24. Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began. I have given them the glory that you gave me. Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am, and to see my glory, the glory you have given me because you loved me before the creation of the world. Jesus also experienced the glory of God when God gave him glory, in what has become known as the Transfiguration. And let's not ignore that the correct interpretation of what happened was that he received honor and glory from God the Father. That's 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 17. In other words, the glory that Jesus had, he got from God. It wasn't innately his. Here is Matthew chapter 17, verse 2. He was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. And here is Luke chapter 9, verse 29. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. What will we look like when we get our glory? We'll look like Jesus, bright and shining. When the Lord appears, we'll be like him. That's our hope. So what happened to Moses was nothing compared to what will happen to us. Here is chapter 1 John chapter 3, verse 2, the final verse. Now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is.